Hello, welcome everybody to another edition of the M65 FM show. So today we look a little bit about governance in the age of AI, rethinking Microsoft 365 policy. My guest is Christian Buckley today. He is an MVP, regional director, collaboration and governance expert, author, also of a science fiction book, and technology evangelist. Uh, Most organizations already have governance policies for Microsoft 365, but those policies are not designed for AI and uh, that can generate content surface sensitive data or take action on behalf of users. In this episode, Christian Buckley shares lessons from more than 30 years in collaboration, information management, and workplace productivity, exploring how governance must evolve to support secure and scalable AI adaptation across Microsoft 365. So, welcome, Christian.
It's good to
This
be
also
here.
happened. Thank you. Uh, yeah, you've been involved in collaboration technology for more than 30 years. What originally draw you in this space?
Yeah, I think it was my one of my first jobs early in my career in the mid '90s. I went to started a little tech company in '91. That got sold. Went and did kind of a contract role with a couple different places, and then ended up working for the phone company Pacific Bell in California
Hmm.
and moving back to where I was born and raised in San Francisco East Bay, and, so it was exciting to move my little family, had 2 kids at the time and 2 more along the way while working there, but, um, I was given the task of building out, or helping build out. I didn't own all of it. I was a project manager, the intranet for our organization. We had about a 200-person organization in the very large, tens of thousands of employees company, and we were a shared services IT team, and I built out I was very, very, involved in project management and methodology around that and building out training systems, and we deployed things, and I was in charge of training people on, like, business objects and other platforms in the mid to late '90s, but built out kind of this automated intranet solution, which got me fascinated. Of course, at the time, the later, '90s, you started to see the rise of instant messaging, the various platforms, AOL, where my college roommate went to work for AOL, tried to convince me to move out to Virginia, Northern Virginia, and work for AOL. I'm like, "No, I already hated AOL." He did very well there, which I would have done very well had I moved out there. No, but, we incorporated chat capability into our solution, and it kinda grew from there. So building a custom, chat platform for those that remember, those are the old school collaboration folks remember when there was, ICQ was acquired by AOL, you had, like, Yahoo, then you had was it NetMeeting? Microsoft had a couple different versions, and with Windows NT, they had their NetMeeting, which was fantastic, but Yahoo Messenger was one of the I think the first that was able to connect internet, like your chat, to landline phones, so you could, through Yahoo, call landlines. So, for example, when 9/11 happened, you didn't think we were gonna go dark with 9/11, talk 9/11. I was in Japan working, and so I was able from my crappy hotel Wi-Fi connection on my laptop through Yahoo, call my family in California while all that was going on 9/11. Um, but, yeah, it's so that's what really kind of sparked it, and then got into as also I started a software company in '97 during graduate school while working on my MBA, and my 2 co-founders and we were incorporating different tools into our solution, but we started to use and if you remember this, we started using what's called Groove, or what was called Groove, which was Ray Ozzy's collaborative platform after Lotus Notes. we were sharing files with each other via FTP server. And we're
Mm,
like, this is an inefficient way to go in through this, and to share files and do all these things and publish things out. Blogs didn't exist. The
mm,
term blog, we were publishing directly to our website, but via this FTP, writing HTML, and Groove came along, and so we started using that to collaborate. And then, of course, Ray Ozzie went over to Microsoft and kind of that direction, which led to, and then I'll finish my story, led to learning about this new SharePoint thing. And it was back in the 2003 version of that. I was researching that, and again, having deployed in the PLM, PDM, so product lifecycle management, product data management space, there was a lot of this powerful but expensive collaborative solutions that were out there that I had been working with another startup. And I found out about SharePoint, saw some demos from Microsoft people in the Bay Area, wrote a white paper in early 2004, which got read by the product team up in Redmond, and I got invited up. And in August of 2004, I did a visit to Microsoft campus, and a year later was deploying SharePoint to a client. Caught the bug. I got it, what they were trying to do, and in 2006, then went to work for Microsoft. So it's interesting, from intranet and project management and collaboration and chat, all these pieces that kind of found my way into this space, and I've just never left the collaboration technology space.
mm. Yeah. The most interesting point on SharePoint, it's 20 years they don't have renamed it by Microsoft. It's I think that it's makes it really special. But
Yeah.
what lessons from the early SharePoint years still apply today?
Oh, I mean, so much of it. It's funny that one of the first conferences that I spoke at, like I was at Microsoft for 3.5 years. One of the first conferences I spoke at was, I think, in early 2010, as an at post Microsoft, was KM World, so knowledge management. And this is back in DC. And what was interesting was I did little like one session, and we were there, for the product company I was working for, but having conversations with people that had PhDs in library sciences. And I was amazed at how much of what I learned back in my phone company days, building out the intranet, working with the technical writer teams, and building out like that content, how all of those rules of what you need to do to clean up your data and keep your data organized, like, we're all still relevant. And even now, it's funny in the SharePoint space. Again, SharePoint just had its 25th birthday earlier this year, and that's, as it was branded SharePoint, it had a life for a couple years, a year and a half before that, other names. But 25 years of SharePoint, it's those fundamentals. I just did a session in Orlando where I talked about the difference between foundational things versus basic things. Basic things are move a file from here to there, that kind of stuff, easy stuff. Foundational are generally harder things. They take time, they take effort, but are critical for things to perform well. Naming conventions, life cycle management of your content, having, again, naming, labeling, classifications, having your information architecture all figured out. All of that is remains crucial for SharePoint, and especially it's important for the AI world we live in. So
This is interesting. You have say some interesting topics. What brings me to governance. Um, what governance mistake do organizations keep repeating from your perspective?
yeah, I think that the biggest mistake organizations are making right now is they're with a lot of this move towards agentic AI. And I understand. Again, I'm out there doing trainings and doing deployments and things, so working as a consultant. So I realize there's what's Microsoft is selling versus what people are buying and adopting and those kinds of things. And I think we're still um, the reality on the ground is a lot of organizations, while the license pickup is increasing. Microsoft is now saying they're claiming like over 20 million licensed Copilot, users, like paid licenses, not just using the free chat versions of those. But their organizations are still in the pilot phase. They're still in the growing. We're nowhere close to broad adoption of it. I think that the mistake organizations make is treating agentic AI like it's just another productivity feature or rollout. This isn't a new version of Word and PowerPoint. I mean, there's new features, AI features in all of the products, but it's not those things. And this is a governance and operational transformation issue as much as it is a technology issues. When you start talking about Microsoft Copilot, Copilot Studio, autonomous agents, which scare a lot of people, it's still, I think it's valid concerns there. Don't deploy something if you don't have at least a fundamental understanding of it. But a lot of the workflow orchestration and other aspects of the AI systems that can actually take actions on behalf of users or departments, that is raising the governance stakes.
Mm.
Organizations are not ready to let go of that level of control. So, and I would say that they're smart to be wary of these things until they understand how they work. Um, and so, I think of, for large enterprises, especially, I usually narrow the concerns down to three major areas that they have. If I remember this, all three of them. I was just talking about them this morning in another show. Well, I mean, the first is, and this goes back to your like foundational SharePoint question, is uncontrolled access to organizational knowledge. Who has access to what information, what data
Mm.
that's out there? And so most organizations already have permissions sprawl across SharePoint and Teams, OneDrive, email, all of the systems inside of Microsoft 365. The problem is that AI discovers all of them instantly. So, an agent can aggregate information across all of those different systems, which is incredibly powerful. It's exciting. I love demoing on that, but it then shows you things shows you access and things with that data in ways that people never anticipated. I always refer to it as, if you remember, Mirko, the Delve effect. Remember when Delve was rolled out and people freaked out a little bit over like, I shouldn't be seeing this information. Yeah, you were obscuring the permissions, but you never fixed the permissions. So
Mm.
you can't have security through obscurity. You weren't seeing it because the permissions were off, but your system was broken in a way that people weren't finding it. However, every employee has access to this information instead of a select group. So AI discovers all of that instantly, and an agent can aggregate data across all of that data that people shouldn't see. So asking who has access to this file, and then what agents can infer from it, what it can do, what it can summarize, connect to, all of that stuff. And this is why Microsoft is talking about AI ready content. That was my session in Orlando at the M365 conference, was what does it mean to have, AI ready content? And that just comes from governance maturity.
Mm.
It's the same things we've been talking about for 25, 30 years. Clean permissions,
Mm.
lifecycle management, sensitivity labels, metadata management, overall information architecture, management, clear lines of ownership, all of that matters in an agentic world.
Mm. Yeah, we have this. I think we have started on-prem, then we have the cloud area, now we have the AI area, and we get all, I think, a lot of tools like Purview and so on. Um, is it or yeah, is it been harder to today? Yeah, to make good governance compliance or is it more simpler because we have all these awesome tools Microsoft provide?
Eh, I think it's a bit of both. And I mean, some part of my background. I mean, having worked for some of the larger ISVs in the space that I would work for AvePoint, which has fantastic products. I've worked with Rencor, which I'm a fan of their
Certainly.
solution. Partner with Orchestry, ShareGate,
Yeah.
SysKit. I mean, there are some fantastic vendors. I would say that those are like my top 5 out there, for different reasons and different strengths, for each one of those. Um, but it's at the same time, you remember that Purview, it wasn't one product. It is very complex. It was like a dozen different products that they rolled under the Purview banner, and to some degree, they're still refining it, kinda building that up. At the same time, you have how many admin centers are there now? Like
I don't know.
14, 16, I'm sure there's probably more than that. And so as Microsoft is doing better at consolidating around their solution and adding more and more, you've got the ISV, the partners out there with their solutions. And then you also have more and more robust reporting and capability around the admin centers. What we don't have are superhumans who can understand, absorb all of that, and are experts in all of those things. It's incredibly hard to go and do. But if the more that people are able to go and automate, and I think that constant, consistent ask to Microsoft is to, as they're building out more and more in all of these areas, is to increase what the APIs can pull upon, and so that people could go and automate themselves, or the third party tools become more powerful.
I think when we think about admin center and uh, I find it a little bit confusing because I think you can do in admin center user rights, but you can also do it in Entra. Um, what is the good architecture and I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not the admin center fan, so I don't understand why we have these all these options 2 times or three
Yeah.
times.
Well, um, so the classic, the answer to that is the answer that every consultant loves to say, where it depends. What you're trying to do. I mean, Microsoft has always been, I mean, famously with their productivity solutions, Microsoft was known for like the battling business units, sometimes having duplicate capabilities in different areas. And customers have always asked why. And so there's famously across Microsoft 365, as you know, there's this which tool do I use and when for some of that capability. That carries over into the governance world, the admin center world. There are multiple ways to do some things. And Microsoft's response to that is what makes the most sense to your organization, use that way. Now, for a company, the downside to that is if I go invest in building a bunch of things, relying on the API, build a bunch of custom things, leveraging the admin center, and then Microsoft make changes to the API, it breaks the things that I automated. I am I forced to go through their admin center, which is again more manual, or okay, then you're forcing me, even though I could do it myself, just for ease of use, I'm going through a third party. So in some ways, Microsoft is forcing me to go pay more licensing to a third party solution so that I can have a more controlled admin panel across all of my systems.
Yeah.
And so there's not a straightforward answer for all those things. It would say it depends on what you're trying to do and what your focus is. And so some things where if your focus is on understanding the level of engagement and trying to improve adoption and things, I would say largely you can do that out of the box. You can use admin centers, you can use reporting. There's guidance from Microsoft on how to go and do that. If you are trying to build a much more fluid, uh, controlled permissioning solution where your organization is maybe largely teams is the front end, and a lot of the automation you're doing is from that perspective, I would say go take a look at Orchestry or maybe AvePoint for that to automate the provisioning process and then leverage and build agents to fill in the gaps there. So it just depends.
Yeah. Yeah, I like use PowerShell and so on and Graph API. I think that's also cool. But what traditional governance models are insufficient with or for AI? Why? Why?
I don't go much into specific models or methodologies. I mean, I look there's a, are there tools and there methods for different roles, for different industries, all those kinds of things. Like I'm working with a client right now that works at more in the industrial sectors, so manufacturing, capital projects, utilities, airports, that kind of stuff. It's a SharePoint shop, building solutions, intranet in a box solutions for these industrial firms. And so the governance pieces that their clients want are different than I had a client that was a school system, and it was primarily just a small IT team and then end users and admins. And so their requirements, what they're looking to automate, what they're looking to do, both of them had governance concerns, but they're just very different. So, whereas the industrial clients want something that's very they want a methodology, they want it refined, that's very much end to end, they're concerned about that. The school system had some compliance things, state and school system like compliance, but it was more that the person who's running their IT comes from that background and knows that they need to do things in a clean way up front, that it can get messy. The size of an organization does not determine how complex your collaboration and communication needs are. I've seen small companies with massively complex and messy collaboration platforms and could benefit from strong methodology. And then large enterprises that keep it very simple and they're like, "No, our needs are very straightforward." So, can
What
I
did?
just answer
Yeah,
half the questions with "it depends"?
yeah, it depends. It's like,
Yeah.
uh, or are or why are companies underestimating the risk of oversharing?
Well, I mean, that is again, having control of your data is like one of the number one problems. I mean, it's funny. You go back and my time spent a little bit of time as an admin of SharePoint. I think a lot of us that have owned environments, and the root of 99% of the issues were permission based, issues. Somebody trying to do something, they didn't have the right permissions for it, or whatever. The problems are because they had too many permissions. Um, and I think this is oversharing means that you don't have adequate control over it. You're not aware of who's in your system and what they're doing and what they have access to. And so while Microsoft, back when they acquired Yammer, if you recall, um, so what was that, 2013, 2014? They and started incorporating that in. Th A lot of the SharePoint environments were very locked down, very controlled, because that was the only way that you could safeguard everything. And with the acquisition of Yammer, which had a very flat architecture, the idea was that, well, with a flat architecture where you rely more on your labeling, your the use of metadata rather than folder and site structure and having all those the depth, that complexity meant that people were more engaged. The fewer restrictions that you have in the environment, the more people will use that technology. And that is just true. Or like I always compare it to like when you're sent a survey,
Mhm.
and when somebody sends you a survey, if there's 30 questions in the survey versus 3 questions in the survey, which are you more likely to answer? The
Yeah,
short one. Right, the simpler.
I take the three when Yeah, but the 40 also not bad, when I get paid for per hour.
Well, there's that, as again, you look at the motives of that. And then I mean, there's other scenarios. Again, it's not a perfect example there, but the idea is, I mean, because there's other companies that I love their products and I'm happy to take their 30 question, survey and give them more rich data. But the reality is that we want to keep things simplified. We want people to collaborate, but we want to do that within guardrails. So the more hidden you can make the controls allows people just then to go and freely collaborate. So, um, for example, if you're a user in the company, I'm in IT,
Mm,
I've created 10 different templates for SharePoint and Teams inside of our environment. And you don't have to ask permission to create a team in Teams or a SharePoint site. You just go in, you can only select from those templates, but you can create away. And on my side, I love that model because I've already ensured that all of the classifications, the labeling, the lifecycle management, all of our backup procedures, lifecycle, but everything is already applied. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to think about it. If you move the files into that project, metadata is picked up associating with it with the project, with the folder that's in. Again, all of that can be automated. You as a user never have to worry about it. All you know is that you need to collaborate, you create a team, you can go and do that. Now, in the system, if let's say what you need to, maybe you need permission to create something with external users. You're working with outside partners. So there's a quick process within 2 hours to get approval. It's just to make sure that, hey, this is a valid request or whatever. Who are those external users? But I can set up a policy that says, every 30 days, you as the creator of that site with external users, you're the site owner. You get an email saying, Mirko, here's the 3 people from this external partner that you let in. Is this still true? Are they still valid? And if you went, oh, I completely forgot to boot 2 of those 3 people out, they're no longer on the project. You can say yes to this one, no to the 2 others, and it then just makes the change. You get those reminders, but again, this is that world where there's guardrails that are up, allowing people to freely collaborate inside. That's I think that's where organizations have gone, need to go, those that have not gone there yet.
awesome. Um, if an organization enable Copilot tomorrow, what's the first governance issue you would investigate?
I mean, the first thing I would do is, in the AI world or just in general?
When they use Copilot, when they start with
Yeah,
Copilot.
okay. Yeah, one, I would look at, well, it's like first. Okay, if am I in there, like I walk into a client and they've got like a hot mess. I mean, because the first thing I would go in, always do like that discovery, like what is the sprawl situation? You've got now the Agent 365. You're able to go in there and see what have they been doing in the system. Microsoft is adding in, so at least you have that observability. You're able to see other third party agents that are in there. Not everything, they're adding more and more. In fact, I just saw a list this morning of like a dozen more that Microsoft is adding in that to be able that they'll be able to support. So if I'm building things using Grok or Claude or your Gemini or whatever, it's going to, if it's on our system, company system, then in admin through Agent 365, I should be able to see those. I can't manage them, but I can turn them off. I can shut them down. Or, which I would hope people go and do, is to go and have a conversation with the creators of those models and understand, what are you doing? What do you need to do? How can we support you? Are you trying to build something that should be built in a supported way using Copilot over here? Or is this a valid thing and what other protections could we put in place? That should be a conversation that's happening rather than just shut people down. Because if you try to shut people down, People are like I always say that people are like water running down a hill. You put a rock in front of them, what does
Yeah,
the water do? It goes around.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I would do is check out the sprawl, and then the 2 would be the cleanup of that sprawl. So, I identify, do the cleanup, start putting the guardrails in place, and that depends on what they're doing out there, but, again, this helps with your content cleanup as well as your agent cleanup.
And when we look a little bit into LinkedIn, we have a lot of buzzwords actually. One of this buzzword it's I AI readiness. What does for you AI readiness actually mean?
Yeah, that's for me, again, that goes to your, content cleanup,
Mm.
your permissions, who has access to what. Like, people who are frightened by, um, you know, people building agents against all this content that's out there, my answer to that is, um, build it build agents around SharePoint environments. Then you can strictly manage what does this agent see and not see. It's restricted to this SharePoint library, for example. Um, so AI readiness would be the cleanup of your data,
Mhm.
cleanup of your permissions, and putting in place those guardrails. That is 1, 2, 3. That's what I would do.
Yeah. I think a lot of companies treat governance topics as an IT topic. So what roles what role plays leadership in governance?
I mean, that's just the reality because a lot of this is coming from a technology standpoint, and my IT is in the lead there, and you might have other parts of the business. But I mean, this comes down again. If you spend any time in the SharePoint space in the information management space, we all know that who the actual owner is or driver of those systems are the departments that are using it. They need to take ownership of it. The those teams, those business units need to have basic understanding of how the technology works and what their responsibility is towards that. Someone in IT is not going to know, but the difference between our two skill sets and what you should have access to, what I have access. They're not going to understand that. And then what agents should and shouldn't do. So there need to be. I'm a huge advocate for the champions model. So
Mhm.
you can have, even if the leadership of those business units doesn't understand it,
Yeah.
you can have champions within all of these organizations of end users that are passionate about this, that want to learn more about it, and can be the representative for like best practices. If you've got a methodology of the AI readiness task force that is, cross departmental, but you can have those champions, inside of each of those organizations and can really help move things a long way to clean up and truly get your content ready.
Yeah. We have so many AI tools in the Microsoft world. We have Copilots, we have Copilot Studio, we have AI Foundry, we have all these Azure machine learning stuff. Um, it's I think yeah, is there a governance strategy that one fits all, or have did I need under
That's never been true.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I say that. It's funny. I do a project management show with my good friend, fellow MVP Sharon Weaver, called Project Failure Files, and we talk about not technology, but around the business issues around it, and and a lot of the failures that are around IT topics are, management kind of giving up over to others around it. There's a certain again a certain amount of understanding that needs to happen. You think about information governance that is best managed at the point of entry and by the responsible parties. So if I'm in the marketing department, someone in marketing should understand our data, our structure, our metadata, the guardrails around that. Somebody that's in IT, somebody that's in sales, and each of one of those things. Information governance is a diffused science that is it's owned by each of the areas. It's also about risk management. If I'm in marketing, I'm going to better understand the risks of who external users, internal, like the permissions around those, again, better than someone in IT. Um, these, if you think about these systems, SharePoint sits in the right in the middle between knowledge and action. And that's why the organizations that are really successful around governing their platforms right now, they're the ones that are, in some ways, they're slowing down a bit around like AI and looking this and saying that we need to make sure, is this the right structure for us? Are these the right policies and rules? What are the policies and rules? Are there compliance standards? Are there security risks that are unique? Yes, to our company, but to our department, to these data types that we're working with. You might have like the sales and support organizations, they're dealing with customer information. So they have policies that apply to them that somebody over in product, they're not customer facing, like, directly, it's through these other interfaces. I would hope your product team is customer facing. But just as an example, um, and so they're not handling that data in the same way, and they don't have those same rules in their systems. And that's why, governance could be slightly different even within one organization, one company. I know people that own this space are thinking, "Wow, that's just a really complex." I'm just telling you that, like, it's if you've got nothing, it's better to have one overlying system than nothing. But when you start realizing that there are differences, there are nuances between business units and between projects in those business units, you start managing exceptions to those that one overlying. And so it starts to get very complex very quickly. And so that's why it's good to have those guardrails up as early as possible. So us as a company, I mean, great example. I went and did consulting for a company. It was the first company where I deployed SharePoint. So this is 21 years ago. But I was hired to do an audit of a number of their systems, but including all of their accounting systems.
Mhm.
So it's all about PII and it was about, the credit card company compliance and they were breaking rules. So they were already being fined. And I went in as an auditor of their systems and processes, redesigned things, and say that people who didn't follow what was redesigned got fired. I sometimes tell the story. I felt really bad. Like I built a system. I tattled on. I had to tell on a couple of employees who then got fired immediately the next morning because they broke the rules that we had just put in place and trained everybody on, and then they immediately broke the rules. And after the CFO had told all of the employees and a couple hundred people, zero tolerance, because they were getting fined tens of thousands of dollars. And they're like, well, this stops immediately. And so they made examples of a couple people that broke the policies. Um, but again, that's what it having those policies in place, deploying that and realizing that the rules that applied, we did company wide, but then most of those policies were really only in the accounting and finance teams. They weren't the same rules for the support organization, for the IT organization, for the management team, the layers, the project managers, and up to the CEO. Different rules applied. But we worked all of that out and deployed SharePoint to help with all of that.
I think actually, a lot of people hate high fuel cost, but I think more people hate GRC. How can governance, compliance, and risk become an enabler instead of a blocker in a company?
Well, I think it's kind of what we've been talking about. If you put the guardrails in place, you have to make sure that people understand the things that you're doing. You're not just putting bureaucracy in place for the sake of bureaucracy. If one of my Buckleyisms, I say this all the time, is the more that you involve people with the process and the development of the process, the more likely they will support the process. So if you're doing things in a vacuum as an IT team, as a leadership team, like we're locking this down. You can do this. You can't do these things. People rebel against that. They push back. They're trying to get their work done. But if you go in and explain, look, we're doing things this way, and here's why. We're getting fined tens of thousands of dollars per month. We have to do it this way here. Then people are like, okay, I understand that. They'll adhere to that. You still need to guide them, but that's the beginning of your guardrails. What you want to do is you want to make a lot of those policies in the background, as many of them in the background as possible, so that you're not confronted. Like when you had to go in, if you're up, I need to upload, I'm working on a file for this project, and I upload it, and there's a huge form just to upload a Word doc into SharePoint. And there's a huge form that's asking me to apply metadata and all this kind of stuff and tag and all this whatever, like that's broken. If I move the file in and it automatically applies all the essential metadata because of where I've placed it, that's the right way to do that. So, yeah, you just have to figure out what are the, hard and fast rules, those are your guardrails, and then lighten up about the majority of everything else where the rules don't actually matter. So I think that the risk profile, it's important to have those discussions, but you're not taking a risk. Nobody's collaborating. My argument is that you have higher risk when you have that lockdown because what are people doing? They're
Mm,
sending those same files or several versions of it via email, unsecured. Now you have zero control over it.
mm,
They're putting things in Dropbox or something that you're not even monitoring. They're using Google Drive.
yeah. Yeah. Shadow IT.
Yeah, shadow IT. Yeah.
What would be your 90-day AI governance action plan look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I mean, I kinda laid out the 3 steps. I mean, I would go in, do the assessment, look at the permissions, do your, your content discovery, who's out there, the permissions cleanup, put those fundamental guardrails in place. I think all of those things are I think that because the number one thing that you need to work on, you think of AI readiness, is the sprawl, your content sprawl, your SharePoint sprawl. You need to look at your Teams. If you're a Microsoft ecosystem, then Teams is heavily used.
Mm,
Is your Teams lifecycle management, all the content that's being created there. So that includes your retention policies, your permissions, the compliance things, all the data classification, and then on top of all of that is your external sharing. I think those are the topics that absolutely matter both in the information management side and the AI management side of things. All of those same rules apply. So, there's for organizations that are thinking, hey, look, we have a hot mess in our hands. Like there are, countless consultants that have good experience, myself included, can go in, help you clean all that up, get things organized so you can get on the right track and kind of establish those rules. And that we all have best practices of governance policies and things and tools and kind of all of those different things. Um, I mean, AI, the agent world kind of changes some of the stakes there because you need to do all these same things to your SharePoint environment, to your data. Wouldn't even say just SharePoint. Wherever your data is, those rules apply. You need to do those things. But now you're not just storing and retrieving information. You actually have to think about how they're interpreting information, how they're making their recommendations, um, coordinating like the workflows. Increasingly, you're moving to AI because you want it to take action against the data. So if it's taking action against garbage data,
mm,
you need to clean up your data.
yeah. Christian, you are also a sci-fi author, so
Yes.
you can predict the future. What will Microsoft 365 governance look like in 5 years?
Yeah, I 5 years, I don't know. How can anybody predict 5 years out? I mean, I think even like 18 to 24 months out, there's still gonna be dramatic. I mean, the rate of new that's coming out now is incredible. As an individual, you can't keep up. You have to listen to podcasts, watch shows. I have a list of regular people that I consume their content just so I feel like I'm keeping up in the areas where I have some degree of expertise. Um, but I think the there's a lot of I think governance will continue to be a major concern. Again, as you said, GRC. It's not just governance. It's the risk, it's security around that. It's why you have a lot of companies that have reclassified themselves as collaboration and communication over into security. But what is it security for? Collaboration and communication systems. But yeah, it's an important part of that. I think we're going to see, obviously, I think there will be a renaissance of, agentic AI. There will be more and more semi-autonomous. I'm not quite as sold on fully autonomous. I think human in the loop, it will remain an imperative for organizations. Um, if you're making plans and like we're just going to cut these real humans around this, I think it's a huge mistake. There's been articles out there. I was just reading something out on LinkedIn like a week ago. Maybe you saw this where I blogged about this like a month and a half ago or something, the same topic. So my ears kind of perked up when I, saw this, heard this discussion going on, is how junior roles are disappearing and they're replacing these junior roles with AI. The mistake then there's nobody that's learning and moving up to become the senior roles. If you cut back too severely, relying on my senior people to be the glue in between the automation, you're not then developing young talent, moving them up. They'll not have the same skills. They'll be overly reliant on AI, and they'll never be the same senior. We're was it despoiling our water supply?
Yeah. Then one secret from me, I scrape every LinkedIn profile complete for every talk I do.
Yeah. It's There's I look, you ask somebody for advice or what their predictions are. I mean, you're gonna get wild things out there. I mean, it's constantly we're being informed by what changes, what's actually happening on the ground. I think, again, there will be a rapid growth of, like, informational agents, those that are going and retrieving and doing these things, advisory roles of, which are historically like intelligent chatbots, like truly having those. I think that's fantastic. But all of that requires still humans creating content. And I really believe that. Because if you have agent content consuming agent content, it's this recursive whirlpool that sinks down, the quality degrades rapidly. You need to have that original human thought in there. So, content creators, I think that there's going to be a resurgent of the long form content.
Mm.
I Not just because I'm a blogger, but because I write a lot. I truly believe that. So there'll be much more like smaller transactional agents,
Mhm.
and this more of that will be autonomous, but it'll be again informational, advisory, and transactional. There'll be shorter sprints of AI, and I really think that is the future that we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years.
So we don't have the chance that AI will manage governance itself.
I don't believe so. I don't believe that'll, I just had this argument this morning. I don't believe that'll ever happen. That starts to get into my religious belief, side of my persona too. But, I just feel like it can't create AI can't create life. Like it mimics, but it's not alive and it never will be. And what that actually means from a technology standpoint, it gets a deeper philosophical discussion. But I really believe that. Like it's we're gonna hit the limits and better understand the limits here, I think sooner rather than later.
So then it's autonomous AI, it's still a buzzword.
Yeah, it is for now, and what that evolves into, I think it'll just I I would love to see the language get away from talking about it generically as, AI and AI readiness, and just instead talk about what are we trying to automate, where it gets more about the functional about what we're doing. I think the language needs to evolve and change around it.
Oh, cool. Um, when you get the chance to say Microsoft one product they should launch tomorrow, what product will it be?
That they can launch anything?
Yeah.
I want them to fix cross-product calendaring. I For those of us that have multiple emails and calendars and we're constantly juggling, and I use Calendly and, the third-party tools which can do part of what I need, but not all of it. Like, I want all of that fixed. I wish they would fix it. My 2 areas that are my kind of bugaboo, like I've been complaining about it. The other one is task management across the Microsoft ecosystem. It's still not entirely figured out. It's getting closer, but if you think about between, like, my tasks in Planner and Teams and To Do, like, they're getting close, but it's still there are huge gaps. But calendaring and task management are my 2, like, I would love to be on an advisory board to Microsoft and just do nothing but give them feedback on those 2.
Yeah.
If you're
I think
listening, Microsoft, yeah.
yeah. And what is the most underrated Microsoft 365 feature you see?
Underrated feature, I um I mean, there's just so many powerful tools. As much as I'm not in any way an expert on Excel, but I'm constantly amazed at some of the depth of what Excel could do. But as far as a feature, and because I do a productivity tips session on a regular basis, and I'm hoping to do one again at a conference here in the fall, and then refresh my list. But some of my go-to productivity tips. I don't know that it's like the most. I mean, there's just a bunch of cool things. Like, I mean, here's one that like a year ago, someone showed me, and I'm like, how did I not know this? Maybe you knew this, Marco, but did you know the format brush?
No?
In most of the if you're in editing Excel or Word or
Ah, yeah,
PowerPoint,
yes, yes,
you
yes. Yeah,
format.
yeah.
Yeah. And did you know that if you double click on the format brush, that it holds it? So if you're changing
Ah, oh, this is
20 things on
cool.
a page, you
Yeah.
don't have to do it one at a time. You double click and then just keep making the changes, and then click one more time to undo the format brush. Like, how did I never know that? I found out like a year ago. It's fantastic. And I use it almost every day now.
This is yeah, this is something that's Copilot Copilot can do for you. So that's really really cool.
Well, I
Um,
love doing that. I do this, like the top 20 productivity
uh,
tips. When I do that at conferences, I mean, there's like every seat is taken. I did it in Vegas last time a year ago, and there were 500 people in the room. It was standing room only. They closed the doors. They wouldn't let more people in there. And it was a big room. And it's one of those where I go through 20 different productivity tips,
uh,
and some things like that. There's some of the features that are newer, some of them been around for 20 plus years. But the whole point is that you might know most of them, but there's at least a couple that you've never seen before and will change your life.
yeah.
And so running through that, and I'll have people going like, heard of this. And then suddenly there'll be a gasp from a portion of the audience. And they're like, you've never seen this. How many? Show me hands. Who's never seen this before? 2/3 of the hands go up. I'm like, all right, let me show you this. I love doing that session. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. I think also for me it has changed a lot for this talk. I try it out the next thing what I do after this record.
Yeah, anybody that's interested, if you go and search on my name, just go out to whatever browser, search on my name, and M365 productivity tips. You'll find multiple sessions and webinars and things. There's a lot that's out there. You can scan through and look at what the tips are. You will find, I guarantee you will find some things where you're like, I've never heard of that before. Oh my gosh, it changes my life.
And is there uh, one book that changed also your life, or
Oh.
you can say this is what uh yeah everyone should read in tech?
Yeah, I always still before that, I say, like, my favorite science fiction book that, is huge. I mean, there's been some fantastic books that I've read, like, Pilgrim's Progress by Paul Bunyan or John Bunyan. Don Quixote was, impressed upon me as a 15-year-old when I read that. Love that kinda stuff, but I am a huge Orson Scott Card fan for science fiction. My absolute favorite, if you want something that is moralistic and I mean, incredible science fiction, but just is a beautifully written book is The Worthing Saga.
Mm,
Love that.
mm,
Um, from a management, perspective, I used to give it out to all of my direct employees, but there's a book called, First Break All the Rules by Marcus Buckingham, who is, with Harvard, with, I think, Gartner, it did this research with hundreds of companies, and this the to sum it up, that book is about managing to people's strengths. So identifying their strengths and managing to their strengths and how you do that. And it's just a great book. The other one that I highly recommend is Eli Goldrat's The Goal. And it's a management book that was written like a novel. And so it's an easy read, but incredibly powerful management stories in it. From a technology standpoint, I actually, besides reading through guides and stuff, I don't read tech books. I read like use products. That's how I learn is by getting my hands dirty, playing with stuff, and then reading through the support documentation for those things. I was just rereading last night a governance ebook that I wrote like 7 or 8 years ago, and how much of it is all still on spot on. But yeah, those would be the reads that I recommend. I highly recommend the one other book that I recommend, and I used to give out to employees, like, I'm a big fan of Seth Godin. The Purple Cow is excellent, but the my favorite is, All Marketers Are Liars, which is great 'cause I'm, I'm marketing degree, so but they're all about authenticity
mm.
and the messaging and using authentic voice and authentic messaging and what that means. So, I mean, just great books for, leadership development management books rather than technology. But honestly, most technology people could strengthen their soft skills. I think those would be great books. Those books would be great to start with.
Yeah, I think there are really good books out there. Um, yeah, so we're running out of time. So yeah, then my closing question: if you could give one piece of advice to every Microsoft 365 admin preparing for the future of AI, what would it be?
There's so many aspects of that. Just remember, that the relationships that you have in your organization are more important than the rules and the policies and the structure. And so by having conversations, which is sometimes harder to do, and that's why I said that every tech person could use some development time of their soft skills, um, to better understand what it is that your leadership team and your end users are trying to accomplish with the technology. That will help guide you in the right technical solutions to provide and and how to enforce the rules, the policies, the guardrails that you put around them. So don't go into it. You can't do these things in a vacuum. You need to be having conversations with people. And I would even argue, I used to do it. My management style is I'm a managed by walk around guy. Like I can sit and report, I can chat with people, but I prefer to get up when we were in the office space to walk around and talk to people like what's going on? What are your frustrations here? What else can I do? Is there anything I can help with? How can I unblock you from what you need to accomplish this day? And have those conversations. If you're not having that level of conversation with your direct reports, but also with your customers, no matter what your role is, then I think you're failing.
Mm, awesome. So thank you so much for being here. This was I really enjoyed it. This was a lot of fun, and I have directly open
Right.
word.
Yeah. Oh, it's always great to be able to sit here and talk and answer questions rather than ask all the questions and listen all the time. But no, I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. This was really fun to talk to you, and yeah, thank you so much for your time.
It was great being here.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.